Hello, everyone. It is Arden here, and today we're going to be going through all of Kamen Rider Kuga's armor evolutions. And we're going to be specifically staying in Kamen Rider Kuga, because I do know there are other different variants of Kuga throughout the other Kamen Rider series. So we're specifically going to be talking about all of Kamen Rider Kuga's armor variations with the very first Kamen Rider in the Heisei franchise. Since what's called Kamen Rider Kuga is the first Kamen Rider in the Heisei era since the franchise's hiatus back in 1988, following Kamen Rider Black RX. So Kamen Rider Kuga is the reboot for the franchise after 12 years from 1980 all the way to 2000. So we're just going to be specifically talking about this Kamen Rider. Uh, I will say, what's it called? If we're going to be looking for lore whatnot, this is not going to be the video. I will be doing kind of a little bit lore for Kamen Rider Kuga itself because I do like the world building for this. I do like the lore for this. It's actually pretty nice and awesome. But we're specifically going to be talking about the armor variants. Well, I'll do a whole video about lore and whatnot with the entire series later down the line because I do like the lore. This is the first Kamen Rider I've seen with my friend, and I really did enjoy this. This and Nagito were really great. Right now we're on Ryugi, for those who want to know. My friend and I are going to go through all the Heisei era Kamen Riders, and then later down the line, him and I are gonna do what's it called? A whole, I guess you would call tier list. Yeah, I guess you would call that tier list of your favorite. Which is your favorite Kamen Rider show? So, with that out of the way, let's start off with the first armor transformation, which will be the growing form, or I guess you would call it pupa form, growing form. This right here is the white armor. This is the first armor that Kamen Rider Kuga, or the main protagonist for this, Yusuke Godai, transforms into, because he's basically this is the armor that he transforms into since he's too inexperienced to access the other forms at this moment, or he also transforms in this form after he's severely injured during battles while he's in his other forms. So basically, he's in his other forms. He fights a battle. He gets hurt. He de-transforms from whatever form he was in to this one, and then later transfers back to his human form, and is unable to transform back into rider form after until like 2 hours have passed because his body needs to heal. In the show, they're called in the show because the police department doesn't know who they are, the monsters, and the writer himself. So they called them unidentified life forms. And so Kamen Rider Kuga in his white form or white Kuga form is called unidentified life form 2 or UL2. And then he has a finishing move called the growing kick, which is his finisher move. This attack is only a third of the strength of his base form, which we're going to be talking about in a second. And yeah, now going from growing or pupa form, we got mighty form. This right here is the base form. This is the red form. This is the main form. This is the most balanced out of all the forms, and the most used form out of all the other forms. And unlike the other forms that we will see later down the line, this one has no personal weapons at all, just hand-to-hand combat. And like I mentioned before, in the show, the police department didn't know who Kuga was until later down the line, so they label him as UL number 4 or unidentified life forms number 4. And for future going through this with the other armors, I'm going to be calling the armors, or we're going to talk about how the show refers to them as UL4, or later down the line, the police department eventually calls this the Red Kuga form. And his finisher move or special attack for this one is called the Mighty Kick, which is basically the legendary iconic kick for all Kamen Riders. This is the long running kick where basically he leaves a mark on the target, which eventually causes them to explode. However, if the target or the monster has very strong resistance, he's able to basically remove the mark, and the mark will fade away and basically not destroying the monster itself. So it really takes a very powerful monster. Going from the mighty form, then we have dragon form. This is the blue form. This form right here is it's physically weaker than his base form, than his mighty form. Still a little bit stronger than growing form, but to make up for the weakness that is slightly that is physically weaker, his speed and his agility is heightened to various degrees, which I think it's doubled when it comes to that form. And in this form, he's basically able to. This is also the form that gets the first weapon. He's able to transform any long pole or stick and whatnot to the dragon rod, which is basically a staff weapon that he uses. What's it called? And then the finishing move for this one is called Splash Dragon, which is basically an aerial thrust to the torso of the enemy. Uh, this also can be done as well by simply either thrusting into the opponent or monster or tossing it at them and finishing off the monster of the day. Next, we have Pegasus form. This right here is the green form. This is also called the sniper form, as the senses for this form are super heightened. So, where in the other forms they were 10 times. So there were 5 senses or 6 senses, depending on how you go by that. You have normal human senses, and the other forms they were 10 times human senses. In this form, they are 1,000 times more sensitive. So he's able to see, hear opponents from extremely long distance with very, very uh, basically precision. He can basically detect the opponents. However, this form has a sensory overload, which prevents him from using this form for more than 50 seconds. Because afterwards, he will transfer back to growing form again, and then will be left without being able to transform after another 2 hours. And this form's weapon is basically able to transform any gun-like weapon or gun-like object into the Pegasus bow gun, which is basically a very powerful crossbow. Which then allows him to use his finisher move, which is called the Pegasus, no, the Blast Pegasus. I like to call it the Pegasus Blast, but it's called the Blast Pegasus, which is basically an arrow shot from the bowgun after pulling the hammer all the way back to its fullest length and launching it at the opponent. And then, last but not least, of the base forms, we have Titan form. This right here is the purple form, or more technically, they call it the Herculean purple form, which is basically silver armor with purple accents. This form right here sacrifices speed for increased durability and strength, making this basically the impenetrable defense that allows what's called Kuuga to get near his opponents, basically long enough for him to attack his opponents. And then his weapon of choice right here is basically the Titan Sword, which, like with the Dragon Rod, is able to transform any pole-like object into the sword. Most of the time, he's able to use his bike handle, which is another thing too. His bike handle is also his ignition key to turn it on. He's able to pull that out and turn it to the Titan Sword. He's also able to use his enemy weapons against them and turn them into his Titan Sword too. His finishing move for this one's called Calamity Titan, where it's basically where he does a powerful sword thrust into the monster and basically twist it as he impales the monster and then causing an explosion. And that is all the base forms for Kamen Rider Kuuga. Now we go to the golden forms. These are all the golden forms that we see in the series. These are the upgraded forms of all the base forms. First, we have Rising Mighty. This right here is the red form in gold accents. What's it called? This one right here basically increases the power of his punching abilities and kick abilities, and he's now able to jump double the height than normal in his regular red form. He now is also equipped with the Mighty Anklet, which is basically a special, uh, I guess, knee guard or whatnot on his anklet, which empowers him to upgrade his regular Mighty Kick into the Rising Mighty Kick, which is more powerful than his base Mighty Kick, causing the area of the explosion to be way more of a blast radius, a couple city blocks. Which in the show later down the line, after he uses this for the first time, later down the show when he's in this form, basically makes sure he drags all of his opponents, the monsters, outside of the city into the secluded areas where basically there's nobody around, so he can use this final attack on the monsters. And then going from the mighty Rising Mighty to Rising Dragon. This right here is the blue form, upgraded. Basically, his punching power, his king power, are basically now enhanced, so it's no longer weak. So they're basically at the height of base form. Uh, Base form for red, I'm pretty sure. And his height is now increased all the way, so he's able to jump super high. What's called now his dragon rod isn't been upgraded to rising dragon rod. So before it used to be a staff, now it's a double-sided spear, which is pretty awesome. With the finishing move being the rising splash dragon, which is basically the launch forward stab to the enemy with the rod, cause them to be destroyed. Going from the rising dragon, we have the rising pegasus. This is the green form's upgraded form. What's it called? And before, er, and before in the regular green form, where he's only able to stay in this form for like 50 seconds. The amount has been increased to 30 seconds now, so he's now able to last from 50 seconds to a minute, 20 seconds to stay in this form to be a little bit more effective. And he also upgrades his base weaponry from the Pegasus Bowgun to the Rising Pegasus Bowgun. That's going to be all the weapons are gold rising, so that's a little bit thing. So to be let you guys know. And before, where the regular Pegasus Bowgun was basically a one-shot weapon where he has to recharge every time. This one's now much more semi-automatic weapon, which is able to do a little bit more attacks. Like with his finisher move, which is called the Rising Blast Pegasus, which now he fires a volley of shots in quick successions to the monsters and destroys them. And then last but not least, we have Titan form, or my technically favorite form, Rising Titan. Now, Rising Titan, his stats, his abilities really don't change at all. He still has an impenetrable defense, and his strength is basically the same. What changes is now his the Titan sword has now been upgraded to a longer so his regular sword was regular sword size. Now there's a lot longer sword, so it's called the Rising Titan sword. And now he has also gains the ability to make a second sword. So before he's only used one. Now in the Rising Titan form, now he's able to use two. So he's now able to dual wield. So now he's able to fight more effectively. And now he has two finisher moves in this one. And his first finisher move is the Rising Calamity Titan, which is basically a stronger version of the Calamity Titan, which is basically the sword thrust. Now he's able to do this now called the double Rise of Calamity Titan, which is basically double sword impaling strike, was using both swords at once to destroy the monsters. And that is it for the rising forms, the golden forms. Now we go to the super form. This is the final form, I guess you would call it. So Kuuga needed more power, so he ended up accessing the amazing mighty form, which is basically this is the super form. This is basically the upgrade of the rising mighty. This one right here is way more stronger than any other forms. Uh, and being the upgrade of the mighty form, this is the most well balanced of the forms. The color scheme for this one now is all black with gold color scheme accents all around it. And this form basically foreshadows his final form, his most strongest form. Uh, Another thing too about this form is before we're in the Rising Mighty, where he had like the one anklet gauntlet or the one ankle, uh, the ankle armor on his feet. Now he has it on both sides, so he now is able to execute a double kick, or I guess you would call it a double drop kick of the Rising Mighty form, which now the feed is caused with electricity, and now the power of it is way more larger, causing it to like a flaming pillar in the atmosphere. Is like pretty awesome. And what's it called? And then we go from Amazing Mighty to the Ultimate form. This form right here is the final form of Kuuga. While the other forms are small fragments of this power right here is I guess you would call it the Supreme Warrior, especially when going with scriptures of the series. This is the final form. This is the most powerful form. So technically speaking, or you could also call this form technically a berserker form. Technically speaking, because it's the fierce warrior. Because in this form, you're not able to control it. You put yourself at risk of basically losing control and basically becoming a monster, wanting to basically destroy everything, cause destruction, and not be able to control it. And basically, the only one to control this are those of pure heart. And what's it called? And what's it called? And his eyesight changes from uh, and then when he loses control, basically, we see this his helmet goes from red to black. The black eyes are basically the is a berserker state, I guess you would call it, where basically what's it called? His normal form is basically the red eyes, where basically he's able to control it. This is also the when I'm on. I don't think I mentioned this before, but what's it called? The final enemy that he fights, which is basically a counter rider, basically so in this armor being the whole like black armor with gold accents, the final enemy he fights is basically the white rider. It's basically the same armor as him, just in white and gold. Because he's also in this ultimate form too. This guy's called Daguva, which when I go through the whole lore for Kamen Rider, I'll talk about that. And basically they both have the same power. They're both physically and mystically in the same level power. Uh, what's it called? And it's a very powerful form. What's it called? One of the abilities for this is basically supernatural pyrokineticus, which kind of like where basically is able to basically launch fireballs at the opponent, or fireballs, firebolts. And then he has two finishers here. He has ultimate kick and an ultimate punch. Uh, what's it called? Though technically speaking, these forms are not seen in the show itself. These are actually ultimate finishers that we see in later Kamen Riders, specifically in Kamen Rider Decade and the ZO, which basically these are forms coated in basically golden flames from golden first golden kick and golden punch. Though we don't see these forms until what's it called? Like I said before, in Kamen Rider Decade. So that's a series I've yet to see. The only reason why I know this because when I was going through the whole what's it called descriptions, like the armor variants, this is all like in I can see and whatnot. And also another thing too. In this form too, is able to create weapons from thin air. So basically, kind of like projection from the Fate series, like from Shiro and Emiya, who can project weaponry. He's able to do the same thing as well. He can create weapons from thin air, requiring basically no physical objects anymore, like before. And he's able to control atoms without any effort. Basically, having to, like I mentioned before, he's able to create basically a barrage of fire to launch at the enemy, which I've mentioned before as one of his abilities. Uh, and that is it for Kamen Rider Kuuga, technically speaking. Because technically speaking, Ultimate Form has technically two variants, but what's it called? These two variants are from two different Kamen Rider shows, which I have yet to watch. One of them is called one of them is from Kamen Rider Wizard. This one's called the Rising Ultimate Form, which I'll discuss a little bit here. But I'm not a little bit too familiar for this because this is from Kamen Rider Wizard, which I've yet to reach as far as series goes because I'm still on Ryuki. This is a further evolution of the Ultimate Form, originally accessed by a different writer. What's it called? It was first seen. Yeah, this armor was first seen used by Godai in the final episode of Kamen Rider Wizard. What's it called? Being basically a direct form from his ultimate form. Basically, with the same wrist, but it surpasses basic. But the other thing too about Rising Ultimate that it surpasses almost all the other Kamen Riders in sheer power. And it presumably has the same abilities as Ultimate Form as well. And this is also the form I was talking about with the Rising Ultimate and the Rising Ultimate Punch, which are the fire kick, and fire punch for his ultimate attacks. And then last but not least, the other variant form, which is Super Rising Ultimate. This one right here is technically exclusive to uh, SIC Hero Saga, which is a uh, collaboration series, or like basically stories based off all the Kamen Rider series and other series as well. Like I said, this is another series which I've yet to be there. I've yet to see as well. So I'm not too sure about that as well. The armor looks actually pretty nice. Not gonna lie. This one right here basically combines at least a little bit of lore that I do know about this. This one basically combines the power of two other Kamen Riders and basically uses them to basically power up the jewel, basically, and turn the entire armor into like a golden form, and basically surpasses. And once again, this form basically surpasses all the other Kamen Riders in the series that I've seen in this, or at least in this series or show. But like I said before, this is a show I've yet to watch yet. Like I'll probably get to it eventually. Uh, but I'm just showing you guys these because these are technically other forms, and technically there are other forms too as well. But those forms technically go from other writers as well. This is not based on. I mean, they are called Kuuga technically speaking, but there are like different variants of Kuuga as well. Like what's it called? Like there's the Kamen Rider Decade Kuuga. Then there's Kuuga from the fours. I guess you called it fours era, or Kamen Rider Fours Kuuga module. Then there's Kamen Rider Knuckle Kuuga arms, which is from game. Then there's Kamen Rider Kuuga Ghost Daimanchi and Spectre Kuuga Daimanchi from Ghost. And then there's Necron Kuuga Daimanchi, which is from the Mega U Lauder. And then we have from X-Aid, we have X-Aid Kuuga Gamer Level 2. Like I said, there's like a whole other variants. And then we have from Zio, which is the one we were talking about, Kamen Rider Zio Kuuga Armor. And that is from the Heisei era. There's also other variants of Kuuga Armor from the Rewa era as well, which from Revise Geist, which is another one which we've seen before, and then Gotchard, which Gotchard drive and then Legendary drive as well. Then we have also the Kaijins, which is a whole other uh, design, which is basically just the beetle forms of the armors, which we have another Kuuga, another Ultimate Kuuga, which are the names of these giant beetle forms. Uh, but yeah, that's why it says like these forms are different forms, and not only show these final armors because technically speaking, they are technically Kuuga armors, but they're way different designs with other different series from other different writers, and we were only specifically going towards Kamen Rider Kuuga. The first one was the original writer of Yusuke Godai, which is the original writer for this. And I only mentioned a little bit of these armors because technically they are part of it, but they're not part of the main form. So that was only a little bit segment for this. What's it called? But yeah, was out of the way. That is all the armor variants, armor evolutions of Kamen Rider Kuuga. Overall, pretty great. It's pretty awesome armor designs, especially the abilities. All of them pretty great. I do love them. Like like when we do when we eventually do the tier list for all the Kamen Riders between me and my buddy, uh, I will say Kamen Rider Kuga is probably be the top just because it really does have a good impact. Its story is pretty great, and I really do love it. I think it does better than anything else I've seen in a while. And not gonna lie, going back and watching a lot of these older shows compared to a lot of the newer shows is like kind of miss this. I kind of miss these types of series, and I'm kind of glad I'm going through this. I do recommend if you do want to start watching all the Heisei era Kamen Riders. I do recommend it. Kamen Rider Kuga and Agito are great. The only thing I will say, if you do start watching, it's a little bit mature. Just know that. Uh, what's it called? Another thing too is a little bit cringe. And when I mean that, it's like uh, remember the 2000s, and specifically remember 2000s Japan era versus how it is now. So just know that when I'm talking about this. It's like so like get used to the 2000s era. Is what I should say. Because I know a lot of people are used to like 2024, like the current era. Just like if you start watching these series, just remember what era this takes place in 2000s. Like a lot of the technology, a lot of the places and whatnot are still there and whatnot. But yeah, that is it for all the Kamen Rider Kuga's Armor Evolutions. If you like the video, please consider dropping a like, share, and subscribe. I always do appreciate it. I will be planning on making more of these type of armor character evolutions or armor evolutions or discussions of characters, power ups and whatnots, and more future videos because I will be doing that. And with that out of the way, have a nice day, folks. As I, Power and sign out, and I'll see you guys on the next one.